The first thing Dean felt was the smell of coal. Not thin, not decorative. A heavy, dense, almost tangible smell of hot metal and sweat, which had soaked into the walls, into the ceiling, into the very wood of the beams so deeply that it seemed it had smelled here even before the first wall was built. The second was pain in his hands. Calluses. Many calluses. Old, hardened, with small cracks. These were not his hands, or rather, now they were his, but not the ones he remembered. Before, he had the hands of an office worker, thin, with neat nails, used to a keyboard and a mug of coffee. Now they were the hands of a blacksmith's apprentice. The third was sound. Dean, where are you wandering around? You lazybones. He raised his head. Above him stood a broad, soot-darkened, short man with a hammer on his shoulder and the expression of a person whose patience had run out 10 years ago. You were sleeping on the coal again. Dean looked around. A forge. Small, cramped, with one large hearth in the center, racks with tools along the walls, a pile of metal blanks in the corner, and a tiny window through which light did not so much enter as seep in. I apologize, he said. The voice came out unfamiliar, young, slightly hoarse. Not the voice he had spoken with before. Apologize. The blacksmith snorted. The sacks of coal will not unload themselves. Move. This was Master Gorn, a blacksmith by the small city market, in a small city near the border, in a world that Dean had not yet had time to understand. It took him several days to piece the picture together. He had been reborn, that was clear. He did not know the reason. One moment it had simply been dark, then there was the smell of coal, and he found himself in the body of a 17-year-old apprentice named Dean Farr, who had been working for the blacksmith Gorn for 2 years already, had 1 copper coin to his name, an old jacket, and the reputation of a slow but diligent boy. Gorn was not evil, just tired and harsh. He took orders for simple things: horseshoes, knives, agricultural tools, and barely made ends meet. The forge brought in enough not to die, but not enough to live. Dean slept in the storeroom, ate at the same table as Gorn and his old cat, worked from dawn to sunset, and received shelter, food, and extremely rare praise for it. It was a poor, cramped, rough life. And it was precisely under such conditions that the system appeared on the 3rd day. Dean was just unloading coal when a window appeared before him. Not outside, inside, as if someone had overlaid translucent text on top of the real world. Light letters, and even font, no decorations. Blacksmith system activated. Host detected. Dean Farr, apprentice, level 0. Skills, forging beginner. Hammer mastery weak. Metal perception 0. Special abilities, none. Status, initialization complete. Dean slowly lowered the sack of coal, then lifted it again, then lowered it again. The window did not disappear. He tried to blink, it did not help. He tried to focus, the text became a little clearer. He tried to mentally press the words, and with a quiet internal click, a submenu opened. Blacksmith system main functions. Material diagnostics forging schemes strike enhancement passive. Depends on level alloy recipes product quality assessment additional. Blacksmith rank. Apprentice 0 until rank increase. Forge 50 units of basic level items current experience. 0 out of 500, Dean read. Then he read it again, then said aloud, almost soundlessly, "Are you serious?" No answer followed. The system was silent, businesslike, and absolutely emotionless. But that meant it was real. From that moment on, Dean Farr stopped being just a blacksmith's apprentice. He conducted the first experiments quietly, while Gorn was eating lunch. He took an old iron blank and held it in his hand. The system reacted instantly. Material diagnostics low-grade iron. Impurities, carbon high, sulfur moderate. Recommendation, suitable for simple tools. Insufficient for weapons. It was accurate. He had seen before how Gorn frowned when working with certain batches of metal, but he never explained why. Now the explanation was visible. He lifted the hammer. Strike enhancement current level, apprentice 0. Accuracy modifier, plus 5% strike force modifier, plus 0% characteristics increase with rank advancement. Insignificant for a start, but it was a bonus that no one else had. Then he opened the section of forging schemes. And there he stopped for a long time. The schemes were divided into categories: tools, household items, weapons, armor, special products. In the weapons section, The first available scheme looked like this. Simple blade straight requirements. Iron 2 kilograms. Enough coal, hammer, anvil, hearth. Stages, 14 sequential. Quality if all stages are performed correctly. Ordinary, good, excellent depends on accuracy system note. If execution accuracy is slightly above 90%, the final quality automatically increases by 1 level. Dean looked at the pile of blanks in the corner, then at the hammer in his hand. Then he mentally opened the first stage of the scheme and began to read. The first blade, according to the scheme, took him twice as much time as such an item would have taken Gorn. He worked slowly, checking each step, stopping when the system flashed a warning. Blank temperature insufficient. Wait. Strike angle deviated by 12 degrees. Corrected. Stage 7 completed. Accuracy 84%. Continue. It was like having a very patient and pedantic instructor inside his head. By evening, the blade was ready. Gorn took it in his hands, not particularly interested. Not bad, he said, which in his mouth meant enough. But the system showed something else. Product assessment. Good average stage execution accuracy. 81% experience received. Plus 40 current experience. 40 to 500 good quality. For a first product. Dean looked at the assessment, feeling something that in his past life was called excitement. For the next 3 weeks, Dean worked. Not like before, mechanically and wearily. Now every strike had meaning. The system gave schemes, pointed out mistakes, assessed accuracy, and awarded experience. Dean learned faster than he should have. Gorn noticed it. At first, he simply began scolding him less often. Then he began giving him more complicated orders. Then one day he stood by the neighboring anvil and silently watched as Dean worked the blank. "Where did you learn to work with temperature like that?" he asked. "I watch it," Dean answered. "The color of the metal." Gorn grunted. "Most apprentices do not see that. I see it." This was true. The system showed the blank's temperature in real time with a color indicator, which made the work more accurate. By the end of the 3rd week, his rank changed. Rank increased. Apprentice, Journeyman Level 1 new characteristics. Strike enhancement. Plus 8% force. Plus 12% accuracy new schemes unlocked. Reinforced blades. Composite alloys. Basic armor bonus. Sense of metal passive ability. You instinctively sense defects and weak points in the material. This changed everything. Now he could see in metal what an ordinary blacksmith felt out with years of experience. Cracks on the surface or inside. Uneven distribution of impurities. Places where metal behaves unpredictably under the hammer. Gorn did not know about this, but he began to respect him a little more. It happened on an ordinary Monday morning, when Dean was calibrating the hammer and Gorn was repairing a hinge for a neighboring merchant's door. 2 people entered the forge. The first was a servant in a blue cloak with a crest on his shoulder. The second was a guard. Behind them was a notary with a paper, who looked as if he had been torn away from breakfast and would not forgive it. "Blacksmith Gorn?" the servant asked. "That is me," Gorn muttered without looking up from his work. "You have a request from Baron ELD, official." The notary unfolded the paper. Gorn finally turned around. "Well?" The notary read with professional boredom. "By order of His Majesty the King of Astorin, through the mediation of Baron ELD, who confirmed this request, an order is issued to the forge. 100,000 combat swords, army quality standard, uniform size. Deadline 7 days. Full payment, Royal Treasury, upon presentation of the products." Silence. Gorn stood. The servant looked at him. The notary rolled up the paper. Then Gorn said, "Is this a joke?" "No. 100,000 swords." "Yes. In 7 days." "Exactly." Gorn slowly set down the hinge, took the hammer, looked at it, then put it back. "This is impossible," he said separately. "Nevertheless, the request is official," the notary replied. "If you or any other blacksmith in the city is able to fulfill it, payment is guaranteed. If not, the army will receive the order through foreign suppliers." And at that very moment, a window flashed in Dean's head. System notification, high priority, large order detected. Feasibility assessment, possible with materials and continuous work. Recommendation, accept the order. Calculation, 100,000 units / 7 days equals 14,286 units / day equals 595 units / hour. When serial forging mode is activated, productivity increases by 18 to 22 times. Serial forging mode unlocks upon accepting a large-scale order. Requirements: materials, iron, coal, water. Sufficient quantity. Dean read, reread, then stood up. Wait, he said. Everyone looked at him. The servant with indifference. The notary with irritation. Gorn with the expression of, have you lost your mind? I can do it, Dean said. Gorn closed his eyes. Dean, I need materials. Iron, coal. In large quantities. If that is provided, the order will be completed. The notary raised an eyebrow. You are an apprentice. Yes. In this forge. Yes. You claim that you are capable of forging 100,000 swords in 7 days. If there are materials. The servant and the notary exchanged glances. Gorn opened his eyes and looked at Dean with the kind of look that usually preceded a long and painful conversation. Boy, he said quietly, you have just disgraced me and yourself. Wait, Dean said again, this time to the envoy. If the materials are delivered today by evening, I will begin at night. If the swords are not ready in 7 days, you owe me nothing. If they are, you pay the full rate. The notary looked at him. This is an unusual offer from an apprentice. I know. A pause. The servant said something quietly to the notary. The notary thought, we will notify the baron. If he considers it worthy of review, the materials will be delivered. If not, forget this conversation. And they left. Gorn looked at Dean for a long time. Idiot, he finally said. Possibly. You do not understand what you are saying. I do. 100,000 swords. In 7 days. Yes. One person. Yes. Gorn shook his head. When they come and there is nothing, you may be imprisoned for lying to the baron. I know. And still? Dean looked at him. Still. The materials arrived by evening. It was the first sign that the baron had still decided to take a risk or laugh. 12 carts with iron ingots, for with coal, barrels of water, and a separate wagon with 3 guards who were supposed to monitor the progress of the work. Gorn looked at it all with the expression of a person who both wanted to stop what was happening and understood that it was already too late. If you disgrace the forge, he said, I will find you. I will not disgrace it, Dean replied. And when Gorn went to sleep, he closed the doors, stood by the hearth, and opened the system. Serial forging mode activated description. When working on one type of product, the system automates repetitive stages while maintaining accuracy. Productivity, times 20 from standard. Current scheme, combat sword, army standard. Stages, 18, 3 key, 15 serial key stages require manual execution with full concentration. Serial stages are automatically optimized by the system. Calculation with current level, 580, 620 products per hour with continuous work, with 7 days times 20 hours of active work equals 140 hours total possible. 81,200 to 86,800 products. Dean frowned. That is not enough. Not enough, he said mentally. Recommendation. Increase rank to journeyman level 2 during the work. When rank increases during serial forging, productivity additionally increases by 15 to 25%. In addition, temporary consumable mode blacksmith's peak is available, 6 hours of maximum productivity, followed by mandatory rest for 4 hours. Aaron closed his eyes. It was possible. Barely. At the limit. With several hours of sleep for the whole week, with pain in his hands, with a back that would break by the 3rd day. But possible. He took the hammer, struck, and time stopped having meaning. The first day was the slowest. Dean got used to the rhythm. The system showed key stages in red. Stop, focus, do it precisely. Serial stages in blue, almost automatic. He moved like a machine, but a thinking machine. There was meaning in every strike. Every turn of the metal was calculated. By the end of the first day, 9,400 swords. Gorn entered in the morning, looked at the stacks of finished blades, and said nothing. Just stood there. How many are there? He asked. 9,400. Silence. Overnight. Yes. One person. Yes. Gorn looked at Dean's hands. They were bloody from burst calluses, bandaged with a scrap of cloth. Did you eat today? No. Gorn left. Returned 10 minutes later with bread and soup. Placed it nearby. Eat. And left again. It was more than any praise. The second day was harder. His hands got used to it, but his back began to ache. The system suggested correcting his posture during strikes, which reduced the load on his spine. Dean followed the recommendations mechanically, without thinking. By the end of the second day, 21,000 swords. The Baron's guards stood by the wall and counted. Their senior left and returned several times. His face looked unsettled. On the third day, the first rank increase happened. Right in the middle of the work, it flashed in his head. Rank increased. Journeyman level 1. Journeyman level 2 strike enhancement. Force plus 14%. Accuracy plus 18% serial forging. Productivity plus 22% new schemes. Improved combat blades. Basic enchanted items require special materials. Productivity jumped. Now the system made calculations differently. The key stages were reduced from 3 to 2. The time per product decreased. By the end of the third day, 38,000 swords. Gorn now entered the forge every few hours. Silent. Watching. Sometimes he brought food and left. He never once asked how, but Dean saw in his eyes the struggle between this is impossible and this is happening right in front of me. The fourth day was the darkest. Dean had not slept for almost 70 hours, with short lapses into oblivion of 2 hours each. His hands stopped hurting, which was a bad sign, because usually it meant that the nerves had simply fallen silent from overload. The system warned, physical condition of the host, critical risk, decrease in forging accuracy, risk of injury recommendation. 4 hours of sleep. Immediately Dean looked at the notification, then looked at the number of finished products. 52,000. If I sleep for 4 hours, he said aloud, I will fall behind schedule. Calculation. 4 hours of sleep, loss of 2, for 100 products, remaining 45,600 in 3 days at current speed. 58,000 to 62,000. Insufficient. Alternative recommendation. Activate blacksmith's peak mode, 6 hours maximum, then 4 hours sleep, then final push. Final calculation, 97,000 to 103,000. Possible. Dean activated the mode. 6 hours of peak. In this mode, the system did almost everything. Guided the strikes, regulated the temperature, indicated the exact moments. His body moved like a mechanism working at the limit. Sweat, heat, darkness, only the sound of the hammer and metal. Then he fell to the floor and did not remember how he fell asleep. On the 7th day, 6 hours before the deadline, Dean forged the last sword. The system showed, order completed total products, 100,000 average quality, good excellent class products, 12,347, 12.3% experience received, plus 18,400 rank increased. Journeyman level 2, Master level 1. He lay on the forge floor, looked at the ceiling, and could feel neither his arms nor his legs. The door opened. Gorn entered, looked at the stacks, at Dean, at the stacks again. All of them, Dean said. Gorn was silent for a long time. Then he sat down beside him on the floor. Something he had probably done for the first time in his life. How? He simply asked. Dean looked at him. I am just a blacksmith, he said, but a very enthusiastic one. Baron ELD arrived personally. That alone already said a lot. He stood in the forge, looking at the arranged rows of swords. Neat, identical, properly made, and remained silent for so long that the guards began exchanging glances. How old is he? The Baron asked the notary. 17, Your Grace. An apprentice? Officially, yes. The Baron looked at Dean. He stood straight, in a dirty jacket, with bandaged hands and circles under his eyes. How much do you want? Enough to buy my own forge, Dean answered. The Baron slightly raised an eyebrow. Only? That is for a start. The Baron nodded. You will be a blacksmith at the king's court. Housing, materials, tools, assistance, everything will be provided. Payment above market rate. In exchange, priority on crown orders. Dean thought for a second. I accept. On one condition. What condition? Master Gorn receives the status of court supplier and a contract for supplying materials. Gorn, who was standing in the corner, slowly turned. The Baron looked at the blacksmith, then again at Dean. Agreed. A month later, Dean worked in the royal forge. It was huge compared to the one where he had started. 3 hearths. For anvils. Assistants, 3 experienced blacksmiths who looked at the young master with unconcealed skepticism. An entire warehouse of materials. And the system was always here, always ready. The first thing he did was open the section of new schemes. Master Level 1 unlocked. Alloy steels, composite alloys, full plate type armor, special products. Traps, lock mechanisms, enchanted items require materials from dungeons. The last point made him stop. Dungeons. He had heard of them. In this world, underground and in ruins, there were spaces filled with monsters that guarded resources, special ores, crystals, bones of magical creatures. All this was impossible to obtain by ordinary means. Only there. The system confirmed it. For enchanted items and higher class weapons, the following are required. Dark Crystal Iron Dungeon, Level 1 plus Dragon Ash Dungeon, Level 4 plus Living Metal Dungeon, Level 7 plus Phoenix Blood Dungeon, Level 10 plus Note. An ordinary blacksmith cannot use these materials without the perception skill. The system host perceives all materials natively. Dean looked at the list. It was an invitation, not just to the forge, to the dungeons. Before him, none of the blacksmiths had gone into dungeons personally. Why would they? Usually, adventurers, treasure hunters, and soldiers went there. They mined ore and sold it. The blacksmith received the finished material and worked with it. But Dean saw something in the system that others did not know. Material diagnostics worked only with personal contact with the original layer. Simply put, if the ore had already been extracted and partially processed, the system gave incomplete information. To get the maximum, he had to mine it himself. He told the Baron about this. "You want to go into a dungeon?" The Baron repeated. "Yes." "A blacksmith?" "Yes." "Why would a blacksmith go into a dungeon?" "For materials. You have suppliers. They do not know exactly where the ore I need is." "I know." The Baron looked at him. "Can you fight?" "No." "Then you need guards." "Agreed." The Baron sighed. "You are an exceptionally strange blacksmith. I have heard that before." The first dungeon turned out to be nearby, an abandoned mine by the eastern hill, which adventurers had already cleared several times. Standard Level 1, weak monsters, known ore, a small amount of dark crystal iron. 2 palace guards went with Dean, and a young adventurer named Kel, short, nimble, with 2 short swords. "Are you really a blacksmith?" Kel asked when they were descending. "Yes." "Why do you need to come here?" "For ore. I can bring you ore." "You do not know exactly where the one I need is." Kel snorted. "And you know? I will soon." Inside, the system immediately showed an activity map. Zone diagnostics activated, detected sources. Dark crystal iron, 3 nodes marked ordinary, or 8 nodes stone spider bone, 2 deposits monsters. Stone spiders level 1 to 2, or rats level 1. Dean walked straight toward the first node. The guards and Kel could barely keep up. He did not hesitate, did not look around. Just moved toward the point that only he could see. "Where are you going?" the guard asked. "There. But there might be." At that moment, a stone spider jumped out from around the corner. Large, gray, with red dots for eyes and mandibles that creaked like breaking iron. The guards raised their shields. Kel drew his swords. The spider leaped, and Dean, without thinking, struck it with his hammer. Not a combat one, his blacksmith's hammer, which he had taken with him. Heavy, short, with a wooden handle. The system flashed. "Weapon is not combat grade. Damage reduced. Weak spot. Armor joint at the neck. Precise strike, critical effect." He struck again where the system indicated. The spider collapsed. The guards stood with their shields raised. Kel looked at Dean. "You just killed a spider with a blacksmith's hammer." It pointed out the weak spot. "Who pointed it out?" Dean did not answer. He simply went to the ore node, bent down, took a piece of dark crystal in his hands. The system reacted. Material diagnostics. Dark crystal iron, highest grade. Impurities absent. Magical potential, moderate. Application, reinforced blades, partially enchanted weapons of level 1 to 3. Recommendation, extract the maximum volume from this node. Dean smiled. Exactly what is needed. A week after the dungeon trip, he forged the first sword from dark crystal. It was a different feeling. Ordinary metal obeys the hammer. Dark crystal talks to it. The system showed not just the stages of the scheme, but also the responses of the metal, where it willingly accepts shape, and where it resists, where a soft strike is needed, and where a precise and strong one. This was no longer serial forging. This was art. Scheme. Dark crystal blade, first enchantment level stages. 26. 8 key effect upon completion. The blade gains the property piercing ignores 15% of the target's defense quality at accuracy slightly above 95%. Superior quality at accuracy slightly above 99%. Rare Dean worked for 3 days on one sword. Slowly, precisely, without haste. On the 3rd day, the system showed the result. Product assessment. Rare execution accuracy. 98.4% blade properties. Piercing 15% durability plus 40% balance. Perfect experience. Plus 2,400. Dean held the sword and looked at it. The blade was almost black, with a barely noticeable bluish edge on the cutting side. Even, heavy, but properly heavy in such a way that the hand did not tire. He brought it to the Baron. The Baron took the sword, turned it around, tried to slash the air. "This is different," he said. "Yes. How much better than an ordinary one? The best ordinary sword in the kingdom would lose to this by 30% with equal skill of the wielder." The Baron looked at him. "You measured that?" "The system measures." "What system?" Dean was silent for a moment. "Mine." After 2 months of work at court, the system updated again. Rank increased. Master level 1. Master level 2. New characteristics. Strike enhancement. Force plus 24%. Accuracy plus 28%. Metal perception. Improved. You see magical potential without touch. Radius 5 meters. Serial forging. Times 28 productivity unlocked. Composite armor with magical tempering. 2nd level enchantment weapon schemes. Passive skill. Voice of metal. Metal informs you of its condition without diagnostics. This was already something completely different. Voice of metal turned out to be strange. When Dean entered the forge, every piece of material seemed to have its own quiet character. This one was even and reliable, that one secretly brittle, the third with potential that had not yet revealed itself. The assistants looked at him in surprise when he took a piece of metal, suddenly set it aside, and said, "This one is no good," without any visible reason. And then it turned out there was a hidden crack inside. One of the assistants, an old blacksmith named Bao, could not hold back one day. "How do you see it?" "I hear it," Dean answered. "What do you hear?" "The metal." Bao was silent for a long time. "I forged for 30 years, he said. "I have never heard metal." "Because you did not know that you had to listen." It sounded arrogant, so Dean added, "This is not an ordinary skill. This is something special. Not everyone gets it." Bao nodded slowly, and from that day on, he began asking questions not with doubt, but with interest. The 2nd dungeon was more difficult. Level 3. Deeper, darker, the monsters more serious, stone golems and fire lizards. Dean took not 2 guards now, but 5, plus Kel, who out of curiosity had become an almost constant companion. "You are going after or again?" Kel asked at the entrance. "Yes. Every time for her. For now, yes." "And then?" Dean thought. "Then for other things." The system showed the map of the 2nd dungeon differently. Not just nodes, it showed zones of magical activity, places where the nature of the space itself created something rare. Anomalous crystallization zone northeast corner detected. Dragon Ash low concentration zone monsters. Fire lizards level 3. Guard golem level 4 recommendation. Bypass from the northern side. The golem reacts to sound, not movement. This was already tactical analysis. The system was becoming smarter along with him, or he himself was learning to use it more deeply. In the anomalous crystallization zone, Dragon Ash looked like a dark gray powder with red specks, scattered through cracks in the floor. If not for the system, he would have walked past it. He collected it carefully, using a leather pouch with a tight clasp. Kel stood nearby and watched the shadows. "Why do you need ash?" he asked quietly. "For an alloy." "With what?" "With dark crystal iron and spider bone. 3rd level of enchantment." "And what will that give?" Dean looked at him. "A weapon that no one in this kingdom has." Kel was silent for a moment. "Are you sure it is safe to mix spider bone with dragon ash?" "No," Dean answered honestly. "But the system gave a scheme." "What system?" Dean closed the pouch. "I will explain later." "You always say that." "Then I will explain soon." It took 3 weeks to prepare the conditions for the 3rd level of enchantment. A special hearth was needed, with a higher temperature than an ordinary one. The system gave a scheme for modifying the existing one. Several changes in the air duct, a different type of coal, an additional layer of fireproof brick. The assistants looked at the modification with doubt. "Why is this needed?" Bao asked. "The temperature needs to be higher." Our hearth is already hot enough. For ordinary metal, yes. For this, no. When the modification was finished and the hearth was started, the temperature in the forge rose to such a level that the assistants backed toward the doors. Dean stood by the hearth and began. The third-level scheme was the most complicated of all he had seen. Blade crystal flame third enchantment level materials. Dark crystal iron base. Dragon ash tempering. Stone spider bone reinforcement stages. 47. 21 key special condition. Stages 18 to 24 must be performed continuously without stopping upon success accuracy slightly above 97%. Exceptional class blade properties. Piercing 30% fire enhancement on critical strike self-repair cracks, close within 12 hours 47 stages. 21 key. 7 hours of continuous work. By the middle of the process, Bao, who could not leave out of fear and curiosity, stood by the wall and watched without looking away. He saw how Dean moved precisely, without a single unnecessary strike, as if every movement were part of a written ritual. The metal in the hearth glowed not red, but orange-white. When Dean added ash, the color changed to bluish for a second, exactly long enough to drive in the next strike. It was frighteningly beautiful. At the 47th stage, the last one, Dean froze, raised the hammer, and struck once. Slowly, precisely. The system showed product completed accuracy, 97.8% quality, exceptional blade properties confirmed. Dean lowered the hammer, took the blade in his hands. It glowed faintly, warm blue, as if part of that hearth had remained inside the metal. Bao approached, looked for a long time. I have never seen such metal, he said quietly. Such things were not made here before, Dean answered. How is this possible? Dean placed the sword on the rack. The right materials, the right temperature, the right strikes. That is not an explanation. No, but it is honest. The sword received the name Crystal Flame and lay on the table before the king. This was Dean's first personal meeting with the ruler. King Estair was not old, not young, of that middle age when a person already knows the value of things, but still remembers what it means to be surprised. He took the sword in his hands, felt the weight, ran his finger along the flat side of the blade. It is warm. Yes, metal is not warm without fire. This one is. The king looked at him. The Baron says you made 100,000 swords in 7 days. Yes. Alone. Yes. And now this. Yes. The king was silent for a moment. What do you need in order to arm my army with weapons of this level? Time, materials, and the ability to go into dungeons myself. Estair narrowed his eyes slightly. A blacksmith who goes into dungeons. The best materials are there. It is dangerous. I can handle it. The king looked at the sword again. Do you have guards? A small one. Now it will be better. He placed the sword back. You will receive everything you need. But in return, highest class weapons for the royal guard. Start with 50 swords. I need 3 months and 3 trips into dungeons of level 4 and above. It will be provided. Dean nodded. Then we have an agreement. After the meeting with the king, life changed again. Now he had not just guards. Now he had a squad. Kel remained as the main scout and fighter. They were joined by Mira, a tall archer with a cold gaze and phenomenal accuracy, Tog, a big, slow, but almost unbreakable shield bearer, and Ellen, a young mage scout who could see through walls and detect hidden traps. They looked at Dean in different ways. Kel with his usual curiosity, Mira with assessing neutrality, Tog with good-natured indifference, Ellen with a poorly hidden question in her eyes. Are you sure you will not die in the very first dungeon? I am a blacksmith, Dean said at the first meeting, not an adventurer. I need materials from specific places. Your task is to give me the ability to get there and collect what is needed. No more. And if we come under attack? Mira asked. Then I will try not to get in the way. And that is all. Dean took the blacksmith's hammer. That is all. Though, the system sometimes shows weak spots. What shows? Optimal points for striking. Kel snorted. You killed a spider with a blacksmith's hammer because the system pointed to a weak spot? Exactly. That is unusual. Agreed. Ellen nodded slowly. So you are not a fighter, but you are useful in battle. In rare situations, yes. Understood. She looked around at the others. We are guarding a blacksmith who is sometimes useful in battle. An unconventional task. I will pay for the unconventionality, Dean said. Then we agree, Mira answered shortly. The fourth level differed from the first three not only in the power of the monsters. It differed in the logic of the space. The system explained this immediately at the entrance. Dungeon level 4 deep mine type. Living dungeon feature. Dungeon structure changes. Routes unstable. Monsters or giant level 4. Magnetic worms level 3 to 4. Crystal guards level 5 target materials. Dragon ash high concentration zone B living crystal detected zone D. Depth forewarning. Zone D territory of crystal guard. Bypass impossible. Good, Dean said, looking at the internal display. What is good? Kel asked beside him. The goal is clear. Do you see something we do not? A map. What map? A system one. Ellen looked at him. The system shows a map of the dungeon? And not only that. It shows monsters, materials, weak points. A pause. Ellen and Mira exchanged glances. Tog scratched the back of his head. That explains why the Baron looks at you like that, Kel said. Dean did not answer. He simply moved forward. And they followed him. The crystal guard turned out to be huge. 3.5 meters of transparent crystal shaped into a humanoid form, with 4 arms and a roar that vibrated in the bones. The system flashed. Target, crystal guard, level 5 weak points. Lower crystal joint at the base of the torso critical point reacts to high vibration stun 3 to 4 seconds recommendation. Vibration strike to the base of the torso. Tog raised his shield. Mira knocked an arrow. Ellen began weaving a protective contour. Dean looked at the hammer. Tog, he said, hold it straight for 3 seconds. I need to reach the base. Tog looked at him. 3 seconds. Enough. Tog stepped forward with his shield, took the guard's first strike. It knocked him back 2 steps, but he held. Mira released an arrow into the monster's face, distracting it. Ellen created a slowing wall on the left. 3 seconds. Dean passed under the strike, entered the dead zone below, raised the hammer, and drove it precisely into the lower crystal joint. The system showed, critical strike weak point hit crystal guard. Stability disrupted. The monster made a different sound, not a roar, but a thin, cutting crack, and began to crumble. When it was over, Dean collected living crystal from the remains of the guard. The system marked every fragment. Kel sat nearby on the floor, catching his breath. You used us as a distraction. No, I used you as partners. But the plan was yours. Yes. Based on what only you see. Yes. Kel was silent for a moment. You do not trust us? Dean stopped, looked at him. I trust you, but I do not know how to explain the map. Try, Kel said. Dean looked at him. They were still sitting deep inside the dungeon, among the remains of the crystal guard. The living crystal lay in one bag, the dragon ash separately. The torches burned steadily. Outside it was quiet. The system showed that the nearest monsters were far away. There was enough time. Try to explain, Kel repeated. We are not going anywhere for another 20 minutes. Our legs are not listening. Tog nodded in agreement without opening his eyes. Mira said nothing, but did not turn away either. Ellen looked straight at him. Dean sat on a crystal fragment. When I enter a dungeon, I see a map, he began. Not outside, inside. It overlays itself on the real world. It shows where the monsters are, where the materials are, where the dangers are. Like a map with marks. Where does it come from? Ellen asked. The system. What system? Magical? I do not know exactly. It is part of me. Since the very beginning. It works with metal, with blacksmithing, with material diagnostics. In dungeons too. Does it talk to you? Mira asked. It shows information. Sometimes recommends. Sometimes warns. And the weak spots of monsters too? Yes. Ellen nodded slowly. That explains the spider, Kel said. And the crystal guard. And why you always know where to go. Yes. Why did you not say earlier? Dean was silent for a moment. Because I did not know how to explain it, so it would not sound like madness. Kel thought. It sounds a little insane, he admitted. But considering that you kill monsters with a blacksmith's hammer, I am willing to accept it. Tog finally opened his eyes. The system says where to hit. You hit. The monster falls. You take stones. He shrugged. Sounds reasonable. Mira looked at Dean. Next time, tell us exactly what you see. Not after. Before. Agreed. Ellen nodded. Then we will be able to work better. It was said businesslike, without unnecessary emotions. But Dean understood the main thing. They had not backed away. They had not doubted that they needed to follow him. They simply wanted to know more in order to do their job better. A good squad does not ask unnecessary questions. It asks the right ones. After returning from the dungeon, Dean spent 3 days diagnosing the materials they had obtained. The living crystal turned out even better than the system had promised. Living crystal, grade highest special properties. Resonates with the wielder's intent magical potential. High when used in an alloy. Strengthens enchantment by 1 class application. Weapons of the 4th enchantment level and above this open the 4th level of schemes. Living crystal blade 4th enchantment level materials. Dark crystal iron base. Dragon ash tempering. Spider bone reinforcement. Living crystal resonance layer stages. 64, 31 key special conditions. Stages 40 to 55 require the host's emotional state to be steady. Metal reacts to instability, defects from anger, anxiety. Haste upon success, accuracy slightly above 98%. Legendary class properties. Piercing 45% resonance with owner. Damage plus 20% at high concentration blade memory. Weapon learns the fighter's style over 30 days of use self-repair. Cracks close within 6 hours. Dean read it 3 times. Blade memory. It was something fundamentally new. Not just a weapon that adapts to its owner. After a month of regular use, it would begin to anticipate his movements. The blade would react slightly earlier than necessary, by a fraction of a second, to that very reflex that had already become instinct for an experienced fighter. In battle, this meant the difference between life and death. 6 days went into the first 4th level blade. Stages 40 to 55 turned out to be truly difficult, not physically, but internally. The system issued warnings several times. Tension detected. Metal reacting. Reduce pace. He stopped, breathed, waited until the inner pressure subsided. It was strange, learning to control himself for the sake of metal. But by the end of the 6th day, the blade was ready. Product assessment. Legendary accuracy. 98.7%, all properties confirmed. He held it in his hands and looked. It was a completely different object. Not just metal. Not just a form. It was a product that lived in the sense that the possibility of growing together with a person had been placed into it. There had not yet been such swords in this kingdom. Possibly, there had not been any anywhere at all. The sword received the name First Voice. It was handed to the captain of the royal guard, an elderly, imperturbable warrior named Sanagort, who accepted the weapon with both hands with the expression of a person used to everything, but still surprised. Warm, he said, repeating the king's words. Yes, and light. Unexpectedly light for such a blade. The balance is calibrated for an average fighter with heavy training. Sanagort looked at him. Did you make this for me? For the profile of a guardsman. You fit the profile. The captain slowly smiled, barely noticeably, but it was a real smile. If the other 49 swords are the same, he said, the royal guard will become a different army. They will be better, Dean answered. I learn with every product. Sanagort looked at him for a long time. How old are you? 17. When I was your age, I was only learning to hold a sword straight. We all start differently. The captain nodded. That is honest, he said, and left with the sword. 2 months after the first sword for the guard, the forge became too small. Not physically, though physically too. The point was something else. Dean began to understand that he could not do everything himself. Not because there was not enough time. The serial forging system gave enormous productivity for standard weapons. But unique products required full presence. And while he worked on one legendary sword for 6 days, standard orders piled up. He needed people. But not just blacksmiths. He needed people to whom he could explain part of the system. Not the system itself, but its logic. Bao was the first. Sit down, Dean told him one day. Bao sat down. He had already gotten used to the young master sometimes saying strange things, so he simply folded his hands and waited. I want to teach you something, Dean said. This is not an ordinary technique. It is a way of thinking about metal. Listening to metal? Bao asked. Like you? A little differently. You will not hear it the way I do, but you can learn to see. And Dean began to explain. Not magic. There was no magic that could be passed on. But the logic that the system had given him could be translated into practice. The color of metal at specific temperatures and what they mean. The sound of a hammer strike, which changes depending on the internal state of the blank. The angle and speed of the spark, which tells more about the composition of the alloy than any analysis. Bao listened for 3 days in a row. On the 4th day, he took a blank, touched it, frowned. There is something wrong inside here, he said. Dean took the blank, activated diagnostics. Diagnostics. Hidden crack. Depth 3 millimeters. Suitability. Limited. Correct, Dean said. Bao slowly raised his eyes. So it can be learned. Not the way I do it. But enough. Then continue. By the end of the month, Dean had 3 apprentices. Bao, who worked with standard products. Liv, a young woman blacksmith whom Gorn had brought, talented and fierce-handed in terms of accuracy. And Run, a boy of about 15, who came himself, asked if he could learn, and did not leave when they tried to send him away. Each received tasks. Bao, serial production of army quality. Liv, medium-class armor. Ren, blanks, material preparation, sorting, or by quality. Dean himself worked only on items of the 3rd level and above. The system approved. Production expansion recorded. Bonus. Workshop. Additional modifier to serial production when working with apprentice's new task. Pass on to at least one apprentice the skill level good blacksmith requires. 100 hours of training Bao progress. 61 out of 100. This was unexpected. The system took teaching into account. It encouraged the creation of a blacksmithing school. Dean looked at this point for a long time. A blacksmith's empire is built not only on swords, he thought, but also on those who know how to make them. The system marked the 5th level dungeon as dangerous. Not just be careful. Specifically, dungeon level 5 volcanic cavity type. Magically active feature. Space unstable. Partial collapses possible temperature. Extreme in zones A and D monsters. Fire Golem level 5 to 6 Lava Hydra level 7. Rare Dust Swarm level 4. Multiple target materials. Phoenix Ash Zone D Volcanic Steel Zone A warning. Zone D inaccessible without protection from high temperatures. Dean read and understood. First, equipment had to be made. He spent 2 weeks in the forge, working on special armor for the whole squad. Not combat armor, protective, with emphasis on thermal insulation. The system gave a scheme. Fireproof armor basic class materials. Dark crystal iron base, plus dragon ash tempering plus special fire, lizard leather lining properties. Fire resistance plus 60%. Temperature limit plus 200 degrees Kel obtained the fire lizard leather himself. This activity clearly amused him. He returned pleased, with 2 hides over his shoulder. Is the lava hydra there too? He asked while Dean accepted the materials. According to the system, yes. Level 7. Better to bypass it. And if we do not bypass it? Bad. How bad? Very. But theoretically possible? Dean looked at him. Kel. Yes. Do not think about it. Just asking. I can see from your face that you are not just asking. Kel grinned. Fine. If we do meet it anyway, what will the system say? I will report it. That is enough. They entered the dungeon at dawn. The heat hit immediately, not like from an ordinary campfire, but like from an open furnace. Dean felt it through the armor, but it was tolerable. The protection worked. The others also held up. The system led them along the route, avoiding the main monster nests. Zone A, volcanic steel, was in a side tunnel. It was a special metal, dark red, almost alive, with orange inclusions, as if the heat of a volcano had remained inside. The system marked it immediately. Volcanic steel, grade rare properties. Has a temperature charge by itself, releases controlled heat during forging in a blade. Additional fire damage on a strong strike application. Weapons of the 5th enchantment level. Dean collected carefully, weighing each piece in his hands, letting the system conduct diagnostics. Tog guarded the entrance to the tunnel. Mira stood at the turn with her bow ready. Ellen kept scanning active. She was the first to say, movement. 200 meters. Large. Dean raised his head. Lava Hydra level 7 detected distance. Approaching assessment. Avoid direct contact. We leave, he said. Did you take everything? Kel asked. Enough. Enough is how much? Kel. Yes. We leave. They backed toward the exit quickly and quietly, Tog bringing up the rear. The Hydra passed by the main corridor. The system showed that it was moving to another zone, not toward them. When they came out into the air, Ellen slowly exhaled. Level 7 is very bad? Very, Dean confirmed. Will you ever be able to work at that level? Dean looked at the bag of volcanic steel. Someday, yes. Not now. Understood. She nodded. So you need to grow. Yes. Kel clapped him on the shoulder. Nothing to worry about. We grow quickly. Volcanic steel turned out to be the most difficult material of all he had worked with. Ordinary steel accepts shape. Dark crystal does too, though with character. Volcanic steel argues. It burned under the hammer, not metaphorically. Literally, with every strike, a small spark flared from the point of contact, and if the angle was wrong, the spark turned into a short stream of fire. Bao, who was watching from the side, backed away for the first time, then returned, then sat down and began to watch silently, without looking away. The system guided Dean through 64 stages of the 5th level. Blade Volcanic Flame 5th Enchantment level materials. Volcanic Steel Base, Dragon Ash Tempering, Living Crystal Resonance, Dark Crystal Iron Reinforcement Stages. 64. 38 Key Special Conditions. Stages 30 to 50. Hearth temperature must remain constant without deviations of more than 5 degrees. Any fluctuation, defect stages 55 to 64. Forging must be completed in one session without interruption upon success accuracy slightly above 99%. Mythic class properties. Piercing 60% fire aura. Flame on the blade during attack resonance with owner. Enhancement during combat spirit state indestructibility. Durability so high that ordinary weapons leave no marks blade memory. Adaptation to owner in 14 days 8 hours of continuous work. Temperature control required constant attention. The system showed an indicator in real time, and Dean regulated the hearth's air duct almost continuously without interrupting the forging. At the 55th stage, his legs stopped being felt. At the 60th, his hands worked like a mechanism, not because he had shut off, but because in 8 hours his body had found a rhythm and held onto it. At the 64th, the final strike. Product assessment, mythic accuracy, 99.1%, all properties confirmed. Experience, plus 8,400 rank increased. Master level 2, Master level 3, he lowered the hammer. Took the blade. The blade was dark red with orange veins, like a cut of volcanic rock, only in the shape of a sword. A barely noticeable shimmer ran along the edge. It did not burn, did not glow strongly, it simply lived. Dean held it and was silent. Bao stood up, approached. "May I?" he asked quietly. Dean handed it over. Bao held it with both hands, then shook his head. "I forged metal for 30 years, he said slowly. "I never thought I would live to hold something like this." "You helped build the forge, prepared the hearth, held the temperature," Dean said. "This is your work too." Bao looked at him. "Are you serious?" "Yes." The old blacksmith did not answer. He simply carefully returned the sword and stepped away. But Dean noticed. In the next few days, Bao worked differently. Not faster, more precisely. Like a person who had been reminded that his labor had meaning. The rank increase brought several unexpected things. Rank increased. Master level 2, Master level 3 characteristics. Strike enhancement. Force plus 32%. Accuracy plus 38% serial forging. Times 35 productivity metal perception. Expanded radius 15 meters without touch new unlocks. 6th level enchantment schemes require dungeon 6 plus materials passive skill blacksmith's will. State of mind directly affects quality. Emotional control now automatically stabilizes accuracy new category. Artifacts. This was a fundamentally different category. Not just weapons or armor. Items with stable magical properties that did not depend on the owner. Amulets, rings, belts, special tools, everything that could carry blacksmithing magic without a warrior wielder. The system showed the first available schemes. Artifact blacksmith's belt properties. Reduces fatigue during physical labor by 40% application. For the system host, doubles working time without loss of accuracy. Artifact ring of diagnostics properties. Wearer receives basic metal diagnostics without the system application. Can be given to an apprentice. The second artifact stopped Dean. Ring of diagnostics. This meant Bao, live, or run would be able to see at least part of what he saw. Not everything. Basic diagnostics was a small part of the system, but enough to work more accurately. It was a tool for transferring knowledge. And this was exactly what would make his workshop not just one man's forge, but something greater. Gorn arrived a month after Dean became a blacksmith at court. Not on business, just like that. He arrived, entered, sat by the hearth, and watched the work for a long time. Dean did not stop. He was finishing blanks for the next batch of second-level guard swords. "Your forge is bigger than mine," Gorn said. Yes. You already have 3 apprentices. Yes. And you are doing what? Gorn fell silent, then continued. I cannot explain what exactly you are doing, but it is very good. Thank you. Gorn was silent for a moment. When you told them you could make 100,000 swords, I truly thought you had lost your mind. I know. Did you call me an idiot then? Gorn asked. No. You call me an idiot. Correct. Gorn nodded without a trace of embarrassment. That was a mistake. Dean stopped, looked at Gorn. For a person of his character, this was equivalent to a long apology. You gave me work, food, and a place when I was just starting, Dean said. That is not little. It is little, Gorn answered. But I do not know how to do things differently. I know. Gorn stood up, stomped around a little. My contract with the Crown is going well. I supply materials on time. They pay well. Glad to hear it. You arranged that. It was fair. Gorn looked at him for a long time. Why did you do it? I was rough with you. Dean returned to the blank. Because you taught me the basics. Even if you did not know exactly what you were passing on. Gorn snorted. Added nothing. But when he was leaving, he stopped by the door. Do not get conceited. I will try. Try hard. And he left. He made the blacksmith's belt first. Not because it was the most important. Simply because it was a scheme for himself, and starting with something that would help him seemed logical. The scheme turned out to be fundamentally different from weapon ones. Artifact blacksmith's belt materials. Volcanic steel buckle, fire lizard leather base, living crystal insert stages. 32, 12 key special condition. Item must be accepted by the wearer at the moment of completion. Personal contact required at the final stage. Personal contact at the final stage turned out to be literal. On the 32nd step, the belt had to be put on himself while the buckle metal had not yet completely cooled. Hot, but not burning. Volcanic steel held heat differently. The system showed artifact accepted by host. Connection established. Properties activated. Fatigue during work reduced by 40%. Additionally, accuracy during long forging sessions falls 50% slower than usual. The difference was felt from the very first hour of work afterward. He did not suddenly become superhuman. Fatigue simply accumulated more slowly. His hands held out longer. Concentration did not break after 6 hours, but after 9 or 10. This was not victory magic. This was endurance magic. And endurance in long work is sometimes more important than any talent. He made the ring of diagnostics for Bao. When he held it out, Bao was looking not at the ring, but at Dean. Why? He asked. You are the best of those I am teaching. This will help you work more precisely. This is a magical thing? Yes. You are giving me a magical thing. Yes. Bao took the ring, put it on, took the nearest piece of iron, and suddenly stopped. I see it. He was silent for a moment. I see that this piece is uneven inside. The left side is denser. Correct. Bao slowly lowered the metal, looked at his hands, then at Dean. You always saw this. Yes. All the time while I worked beside you. Yes. Then why did you not simply tell me what was good and what was bad? Because it is your job to determine it yourself. I could have told you every time, but then you would have depended on my voice, not on your hands. Bao was silent for a long time. You think like a teacher, he finally said. I am an archivist, Dean answered automatically. Who? Never mind. It was long ago. Bao nodded without understanding, but accepted it. Thank you, he said simply. And from that day on, he began working with the ring, each time discovering what he previously had to guess. The system designated the 6th level dungeon as territory. Dungeon level 6 Crystal Catacombs feature. Dungeon has intelligence. Reacts to the intentions of those who enter. Monsters. Ice Knights level 6. Crystal Dragon level 8. Dungeon Master target materials. Ice of Eternity Zone. See Crystal Dragon Bone only upon victory over the Master warning. Dungeon Master is an intelligent being. Contact possible. Contact possible. Dean reread this several times. Ellen, he said during preparation. Do you know anything about Dungeon Masters? Ellen thought for several seconds. I have heard a theory. Some old dungeons create a central being, a kind of consciousness of the space. It is not always aggressive, but always cautious. So one can talk? Theoretically. But no one has done it intentionally, as far as I know. Then we will try first. Kel scratched his head. This is an increasingly strange job for a blacksmith. Are you dissatisfied? No. But tell this to someone outside and look at their face. The catacombs were cold and quiet. Crystals grew from the floor and ceiling, forming almost architectural shapes, not chaotic, but deliberate. The system immediately showed. Dungeon reacts to the host's presence. The master is aware of you. Recommendation: do not show aggression unnecessarily. They moved slowly, without noise. Ice of Eternity was found in Zone C, bluish-white, dense, cold to such a degree that even through gloves it made the fingers ache. Ice of Eternity, grade pure properties, absolute temperature stability and alloy, stops magical degradation of the item application. Weapons of the 6th enchantment level, Eternal Armor Dean collected carefully. The system approved every fragment. It was then that something moved in the depth of the corridor. Tog raised his shield. Mira drew her bow. A crystal dragon emerged from the darkness. Not small, huge, about 12 meters from muzzle to tail, with wings pressed to its body in the confined space. Transparent, like glass, with a blue shimmer in the core of its body. It stopped 20 meters away. Watched. The system showed Crystal Dragon Level 8 status. Assessing recommendation. Do not attack. Dean stepped forward. Do not, Kel said quietly. Wait. He stopped between the squad and the dragon. The dragon looked at him. Dean raised his empty hands. Not a gesture of peace in the human sense. He simply showed that he held nothing. The system suddenly showed a new line. The dungeon master is trying to establish contact. Host ability detected. Sense of metal is perceived as magical closeness to the crystal nature of the dungeon. Recommendation: activate diagnostics on the master. Dean focused. Activated diagnostics. Diagnostics. Crystal Dragon Material Nature. Living Crystal plus Ice of Eternity plus Space Magic Condition. Stable feature. Creature senses diagnostics as touch in the next second. The dragon lowered its head slowly, not aggressively, then raised it, and went deeper into the corridor. Silence. Ellen exhaled very quietly. What was that? Kel asked in a whisper. It felt that I see its nature, Dean said. It was like recognition. The dragon recognized you? Something like that. You understand that this sounds absolutely insane? Yes. But it is happening. Yes. Kel looked toward where the dragon had gone. Are we returning? Yes. I have everything I need. They went to the exit, and the whole way Dean thought about one thing. The dragon had not left out of fear. It left because Dean showed he was here not as an enemy, but as one who sees. The system perceives him as a blacksmith, but the world of dungeons is beginning to perceive him as someone who understands the nature of things. This is another level. The 6th level sword became the first one Dean worked on for 9 days. Blade Ice and Crystal 6th enchantment level materials. Volcanic steel base. Ice of Eternity tempering. Living crystal resonance. Spider bone reinforcement. Dragon ash binding layer stages. 8244 key special condition. The contradiction of fire and ice in the materials requires reconciliation. The system host must maintain concentration on all 44 key stages simultaneously upon success. Divine class. First in this world properties. Piercing 75% dual aura. Fire on attack. Ice on defense. Absolute durability resonance with owner. Unlimited adaptation time. Slowdown on critical strike 0.3 seconds time slowdown. This already bordered on something beyond ordinary weapons. Dean worked carefully. The system warned about the feature of reconciliation. When opposing elements are joined in one item, the metal resists. It was necessary not to force through the resistance, but to give the metal time to accept. Lessons of patience again. At the 44th key stage, the system showed something new. Metal is in the state limit of reconciliation. Detected, you are experiencing your own contradiction. System, blacksmiths will require honesty with yourself before the final strike. Dean stopped. Honesty with himself. He stood by the hearth in the night forge, in silence, and thought. He had built a path here from apprentice to master, from one sword to mythic blades. He had built a workshop, trained people, gone into dungeons. All of it was real. All of it made sense. But why? For the king? For money? To survive in a foreign body in a foreign world? He thought. And the honest answer was different. He did it because it was the only thing he was truly good at in both lives, in the past one and in this one. In the past, he worked with papers and archives, gathered, systematized, passed on. Here he did the same thing, only with his hands and metal. He was building a system that transmits quality, that leaves a trace. Not power, not fame, just a trace. Items that would outlive him. People he had taught something. Swords that would serve longer than he himself. This was the honest answer. The final strike came out quiet, precise. Product completed accuracy, 99.6% quality. Divine first item of this class in this world. Experience, plus 15,000. Dean held the sword. The blade was absolutely transparent, not like glass, but like water on a calm day. His fingers were visible through it. Orange and blue shimmered in turn along the cutting edge. He did not know whom this weapon was intended for, but he knew that when this weapon found its owner, it would become part of something great. That night, after completion, the system showed something unexpected. Not a scheme, not an assessment, not the next step. System message: maximum priority. Host has achieved the first divine class item in this world. The system registers. There is not a single blacksmith in the world capable of repeating this item without the system. This is an important point. Explanation. The original goal of the system is not the creation of weapons. The goal of the system is the creation of a blacksmithing school that will change the balance of power between people and the threats of the dungeons. Current progress. Personal rank. Master level 3 apprentices with skill transfer. 1 bow good blacksmith artifacts created. 2 dungeons cleared. 6 items of mythic class and above. 2 next system goal. Create the first blacksmith guild, a structure that reproduces and scales the host's mastery through training, artifacts, and quality standards. This will change the world more strongly than any weapon. Dean read for a long time, then reread, then closed the system and sat by the cooling hearth. Blacksmith Guild. Not just one blacksmith. Not just swords for the king. A structure that lives longer than one person. He looked at the tools on the walls, at the anvil that he had managed to beat into a shape slightly more convenient for himself, at the bags of ore, at the schemes Liv had drawn and nailed by the workplace. Then he stood up, took paper, and began writing the first draft of the guild the way he had once written academic catalogs. Systematically, without unnecessary words. Requirements for masters, qualification levels, quality standards, access to materials, training apprentices, connection with dungeons. It would be long, it would be difficult, but it would be a trace. The next day, he came to Baron Eld. "I need a meeting with the king," he said. The Baron looked at him. "Again?" "Yes." "On what matter this time?" Dean placed the scroll with the first draft before him. The Baron read slowly, reread, frowned. "You want to create a guild of blacksmiths?" "Yes, with standards that you yourself define, with a system of standards." "I do not define them. The system defines them through the quality of the items. That means you will decide who is good enough and who is not." "No, the item will decide. If it passes quality control, the master is accepted. If not, he learns further." The Baron looked at him. "This will take power away from the old blacksmith houses. This will create a new structure beside them, not instead of them. Do you think they will accept it?" Dean was silent for a moment. "No, but by the time they decide to object, the guild will already be needed by the army. And the army is more important than the old houses." The Baron looked at the scroll for a long time, then put it into a drawer. "I will pass it to the king." "Thank you." "And Dean?" "Yes? You continue to surprise me. It is unpleasant in a good sense." Dean nodded, and left. In the evening, the forge was quiet. Bao had left. Liv was finishing the last batch of blanks. Ren was sweeping the floor. He always did it at the end of the day with the look of a person thinking about something completely different. Dean sat by the hearth, not working, simply looked at the fire. Kel came in without knocking. He had long since stopped knocking. "You look thoughtful," he said. "Thinking. About what?" Dean was silent for a moment. "About where all this is leading. To the guild? And beyond." Kel sat beside him. "Beyond is where?" "The world is full of dungeons, monsters, threats. People have swords, but they are bad. There is armor, but it is weak. There are mages, but there are few of them. If the guild is built correctly, in 10 years the weapons that only the King's Guard has now will be in the hands of every experienced fighter. It will change the balance. Between people and monsters?" "Yes," Kel thought. "So you want to arm the world." "I want to give the world tools so it can protect itself. That is a big plan for a blacksmith." "I know. Will your system help you?" "It already is helping." Kel nodded. "Then I am with you." Dungeons do not end, materials do not end, and life in your squad is definitely not boring. Dean looked at him. Thank you. Do not thank me. Pay properly. I pay properly. Then everything is fine. Rin finished sweeping, put the broom down, looked at them. May I ask? He said. Ask, Dean answered. When will I become like you? Dean looked at him, a 15-year-old boy with a broom, who had come on his own, stayed on his own, and never complained. Work as you do now, Dean said. In a few years, you will surpass me. Rin blinked. Really? If you do not stop. The boy was silent for a moment, then nodded seriously, like an adult, and left. Kel watched him go. You know how to talk to people. I am an archivist, Dean said quietly. We work with what is valuable so it does not disappear. What do you mean? Ren. Bow. Live. They are valuable. My task is not to lose them. The fire in the hearth crackled quietly. Outside it was evening. The forge smelled of coal and metal, and somewhere in a drawer lay the guild project, which in a few days would land on the king's desk. Everything was only beginning. The king did not answer immediately. That was even worse than refusal. In the royal palace, any silence meant something. Either the council was arguing, or they were looking for a weak spot, or they were already preparing a trap. Dean knew this after several months at court. He was not part of the aristocracy, but he had learned to read pauses almost as well as metal. A week passed, then another 3 days, and then Baron ELD came for him personally. His Majesty wishes to see you, he said without preamble. Dean rose. Alone? With me. That was already an answer. Not completely, but enough. The king was either interested or considered what was happening serious enough to deal with personally. There were not that many people in the throne room. King Estair sat in the center, leaning slightly forward. The chief advisor stood nearby, and at the edges were 2 people Dean had previously seen only from a distance. The head of the treasury and a representative of the old blacksmith houses. Now this was already interesting. The folder with the guild scroll lay on the table before the king. Estair looked at Dean and said, You are not asking for permission. You are asking to change the order. Dean bowed his head just enough for it to look respectful. I am asking to create a system that will make weapons and armor better, faster, and more consistently. Under your control, the man from the blacksmith houses said dryly. Under quality standards, Dean answered. Not under my whim. The advisor tapped his fingers on the table. Explain why this benefits the state. Dean did not hurry. He took 3 samples from an inner pocket, an ordinary sword from a city forge, a dark crystal blade, and first voice, the legendary sword for the guard. He placed them on the table. Here are 3 levels. The first is mass-produced, but mediocre. The second is already an army standard above average. The third is a weapon capable of changing the course of battle. Right now there is a chasm between them. The guild will allow that chasm to be reduced tenfold. The man from the blacksmith houses snorted. Words. No, Dean said. Products. The king raised his hand, and the argument fell silent. Continue. The guild will create training. Standards. Quality checks. Apprentices will grow faster. Materials will be used more efficiently, and the court will have a separate channel for higher-class products. Not only for me, for future masters. And what will the old houses receive? Estair asked. The right to participate if they meet the standards. The advisor leaned forward. And if not, then they will remain craftsmen of the past. The hall became quiet. Dean understood that he had said something dangerous, but it was too late to retreat. If he started going around the problem, nothing would change. The king looked at him for a long time, then unexpectedly asked, Do you understand that right now you have made enemies for yourself? Yes. And you still propose this? Yes. Estair looked at the Baron. This boy is either mad, or he is already thinking 10 years ahead. Baron ELD shrugged slightly. He made 100,000 swords in a week. I have already stopped guessing. The king smirked. Just a little. Good. He placed his palm on the scroll. The guild will be created, but under the control of the crown, and you will become its first master mentor. Dean exhaled slowly. Thank you, your majesty. Do not rush to thank me. You will have to prove that this is not another ambition of a talented blacksmith. I will prove it. And one more thing. The king looked at him intently. The old houses will be displeased. Possibly very displeased. Can you handle it? Dean answered calmly. I have handled dungeons. This drew a short, almost invisible chuckle from the king. Then let us see how a blacksmith handles the nobility. The displeasure of the old houses began even before the official decree. While the guild was only being formalized on paper, the city was already whispering that the young master had taken too much upon himself, that he came from nowhere, that the crown supported him, that people like him would destroy true craft. Dean heard this, not from everywhere, but enough. The first to come was Lord Versald, head of one of the oldest blacksmith houses in the capital. He was accompanied by 2 sons and a servant with an arrogant face. They entered the forge without knocking. This in itself was already a statement. "So this is the famous Dean," Lord Sald drawled, looking around the workshop. Dean stood at the work table and did not put down the file. "Yes, very young. Do you dislike my age?" "I dislike that a child is deciding how the blacksmithing of the kingdom will work." Liv, standing by the far hearth, quietly inhaled. Bao, on the contrary, did not move, only tightened his grip on the tongs. Dean put the tool aside. "Then you are fortunate. I decide nothing alone. I propose a system. Standards. Quality control. The possibility of growth. Craft is not numbers," Sald cut him off. "Disable a forge and see how much traditions help you," Dean answered calmly. One of the Lord's sons stepped forward. "You are being insolent." "I am explaining. You are nothing without the crown." Dean looked at him. "Possibly, but the crown is already listening to me. And not to you yet." It was said evenly, without raising his voice, and that was precisely why it struck harder. Sald's face darkened. "You do not understand whom you are speaking to." "I do. You are afraid that the guild will take away your monopoly." "Monopoly?" The Lord smirked coldly. "We preserve tradition." "No," Dean said. "You preserve an order convenient for yourselves, where new masters are forced to buy your approval instead of showing quality." Silence. Sald slowly straightened. "If the king truly gives you power," he said, "then we will see how long you last." "As long as needed," Dean answered. After they left, Bao finally spoke. "You just made an enemy in one of the most stubborn houses in the capital." "I know. And that does not frighten you?" Dean looked at the cooling hearth. "It frightens me, but it does not stop me." The guild appeared quickly, too quickly by the standards of bureaucracy. The king wanted a result, and the result was needed not in years, but now. Therefore, a separate building beside the royal forge was allocated for a training wing. Dean received the right to personally select apprentices. This was the first time he had not just a staff, but a structure. He drew up the rules. 1. An apprentice passes a basic test for strength, patience, and the ability to work with temperature. 2. Each apprentice receives a visual scheme for assessing metal. 3. All products are checked by 3 criteria: structure, balance, tempering. 4. Any mistake is analyzed, not simply punished. 5. Extortion, bribes, and family placements are forbidden within the guild. The last point caused a storm. Dean knew it would. That was exactly why he insisted. On the very first day, some of the old masters came to complain that a boy was breaking centuries-old orders. Dean did not argue for long. He simply offered them to take the quality test. 3 old masters agreed. 2 failed on diagnostics of hidden cracks. 1 could not explain why his swords came out too heavy for light infantry soldiers. Bao watched this silently, then said, "You do not quarrel. You simply put the truth before them." "It works better," Dean answered. And indeed, by the end of the week, the guild had its first real apprentices. Among them were Run, who turned out to be not just an assistant, but a person with rare endurance and attention to detail. Liv, who had become no longer a journeyman, but a fully capable mid-level blacksmith woman. 2 young people from the province, Tak and Senna, both with a good sense of form, but different motor skills. And 1 more, the most unexpected, the son of a minor noble, who came not through patronage, but because he wanted to see how the weapons of the true future were made. Dean did not refuse. The guild now had a rule. If there is ability, origin does not matter. The scandal happened in the 3rd week. Orders began disappearing from the city forges. Not all of them, some. And not by chance. People began to prefer the guild's products because they were better. Blades lasted longer. Armor was more comfortable. Even the most ordinary knives and horseshoes came out more even. This struck at the old houses. And they began to act. First with rumors. Supposedly, the guild worked for the royal purse and did not give masters freedom. Then with accusations, as if Dean used magical tricks that no one could repeat. Then, more subtly, they began bribing apprentices, promising them a place in true mastery after the fall of the new structure. Dean responded simply, with a public demonstration. He gathered all the apprentices, several masters, representatives of the crown, and 3 old blacksmith houses in one hall. 2 swords were placed on the table, one from the old school, the other from the new one, created by Liv according to Dean's scheme, but without his direct participation. Compare them, he said. The inspection was dispassionate. The old school steel turned out to be normal, but with uneven tempering. The guild sword was even, balanced, more durable. The old masters began to argue. Then Dean gave the floor to Liv. I made it without Master Dean's participation, she said, but according to the standards he introduced. So what? They asked. And the point is that now I can make such things myself. This was a victory. Not Dean's personally. The systems, the schools, the structures. And the old houses like this even less than the quality of the products itself. When the guild stabilized, the system issued a new priority again. Dungeon Level 7 Black Forge Type. Ancient Artifact Structure Feature. Dungeon reacts to blacksmithing intent monsters. Forge Golem Level 8 Smelting Beast Level 7 Keeper of Anvils Level 9. Elite Target Materials. Living Metal Heart of the Ancient Anvil Black Coal of the Abyss Warning. This dungeon was created not by nature, but by ancient blacksmiths. Contact with heritage possible. Dean read and almost smiled. A dungeon for a blacksmith. Not an ore deposit. Not a mine. Not a volcano. But a place where once worked those who understood metal at the level of art. It was too close to a dream. He gathered the squad. Kel already knew what it meant when the system showed a new priority, so he did not ask unnecessary questions. 7th level? Mira asked again. This is no longer a walk. Yes. What materials? Living metal. Part of the ancient anvil. Black coal of the abyss. Tog scratched the back of his head. Sounds like a conversation of people who want to kill us. Sometimes it is, Dean answered. Ellen tilted her head. And what will come from this? If the scheme is not lying, he said, I will be able to create weapons and armor that will not simply be strong. They will understand the owner. Everyone exchanged glances. That is powerful, Mira said quietly. Yes, and very dangerous. That is why we are going not for adventure. For materials. Kel smirked. Of course, for materials. What else could a blacksmith be doing in an ancient black dungeon? The entrance to the dungeon was not in a cave and not in ruins. It was under an old ruined fortress, where the stone had been fused into unnatural forms, and the air smelled of iron and old soot. The system responded immediately. The space perceives you as a blacksmith. Status, admitted. Attention, the Keeper of Anvils already knows of your presence. Dean stopped at the entrance. Knows? Kel asked. Yes. Is it talking to you? I do not know. They entered. Inside, everything was black. Not just dark, exactly black, as if light here lost part of itself. The walls were made of old metal. Huge anvils stood along the corridors like statues. And everywhere there were traces of forging, hammer imprints, drops of hardened slag, lines resembling writing. The system showed material black coal of the abyss found properties, burning temperature higher than any ordinary or strengthens bond formation in alloy application. Weapons level 7+, and artifacts. It was there that they saw the first guard. A forge golem. It looked like a person assembled from metal plates and pieces of stone. Instead of a face, a mask with cracks. Instead of hands, heavy tongs and a hammer. The system showed the weak spot. Golem reacts to rhythm. Disrupt the rhythm of its movements. Weaken the structure. Tog. Dean said, if it moves, do not stand straight. Shift it to the side. Mira, hit the joints. Kel, right flank. Ellen, slowing. He himself held the hammer. The golem moved. On the second step, the floor beneath it trembled. Dean did not wait. He struck the knee where metal joined a piece of black stone. A dull sound. A crack. Mira fired an arrow precisely into the neck. Tog took the answering blow with his shield. Ellen bound the legs with a misty contour. The golem collapsed. And then the system for the first time showed not only material, but also a record. Detected. Fragment of an ancient blacksmithing inscription translation. A blacksmith creates not a weapon. He creates a form of will. Dean froze. Read it. Again. This was not just an ancient message. It was an answer to everything he was doing. He was creating a form of will. The keeper turned out not to be a monster in the usual sense. It was a tall, almost human silhouette of dark metal, with a face covered by an eyeless mask. In its hands, it held a long hammer that resembled a royal scepter. It stood in the central hall of the dungeon before a giant anvil, and when Dean entered, it did not attack. It spoke. The voice was deep, metallic, but not without meaning. "Host, you have come to the heritage." Dean stopped. "Who are you?" "Guardian of the Forge's memory. The last of those who were connected to this place before the fall of the ancient school." Kel quietly exhaled behind Dean's back. Dean did not look away. "What heritage?" The keeper slowly raised the hammer. "Those who created great blades here understood. Metal is an agreement. With fire, with form, with the owner. You are building the new without destroying the old. That is rare. I simply do what works." "No," the keeper answered. "You do more. You join craft and system. You take the ancient and translate it into a language understandable to the current world." The system flashed. The keeper of anvils offers a trial. Condition: create an item on the central anvil from the materials of this dungeon. Reward: access to the heart of the ancient anvil and blueprints level 7 plus risk. High. Dean looked at the central anvil, then at his hands, then at the squad. "I accept," he said. The materials for the trial were already nearby. Living metal, black coal of the abyss, a fragment of a crystal core from an old section of the dungeon. The keeper watched silently. The system displayed a new scheme. Trial of the ancient forge create. Blade of will properties upon completion. Enhancement of owner's skills adaptation to combat style memory of form connection with the heart of the ancient anvil special condition. The item must be created without external hints from the system on the last 10 stages reason. The ancient forge recognizes only independent mastery. Dean frowned. The last 10 stages without the system. That meant he had to do it not by hint, but himself, relying on everything he had learned. It was frightening. And right, because if the system does everything for you, you become dependent. And the ancient forge demanded independence. He began. The first stage was smelting. The second, forming the core. The third, adding living metal. Then the intermediate stages, where the system still helped. By the end, he reached the last 10-stage section and turned off the hints. The hall became quiet. Dean looked at the metal and acted as he would have acted without the system, once in his past life. By memory, by understanding, by inner feeling. Not perfectly, but honestly. One strike, a second, a third, and then the blade straightened. The system was silent until the very end, and then issued. Trial completed blade of will created quality. Divine additional effect. The blade's owner receives a 25% increase in control over weapons and equipment. Access to the heart of the ancient anvil. Open. The keeper dropped to one knee. "You are accepted." The heart of the anvil turned out to be neither a stone nor a rune. It was a huge crystal, black with red veins, slowly pulsing in the central niche of the hall. The system showed, heart of the ancient anvil properties. Increases the quality of items created within a radius of 50 meters, allows temporary acceleration of material transition into a plastic state, can become the core of a new forge artifact. Dean looked at it for a long time. "Can this be taken?" he asked. The keeper nodded. "Only by the one who created the Blade of Will." "And what will happen to the dungeon?" "It will change. Part of the heritage will pass to you, but it will not be destroyed." Dean understood. This was exactly what he wanted. Not to destroy the old, but to carry it into the future. He carefully touched the heart. The system flashed. Connection established. New object. Heart of the forge available. Creation of forge node level 7 plus in your world. Dean pulled his hand back. "What does that mean?" Kel asked. Dean slowly turned. "It means," he said, "that I can build a place where everything will become stronger. Not only me." When they returned, the royal forge no longer seemed like the limit to him. Now it was only a stage. He placed the heart of the ancient anvil in a separate closed room, prepared under his control. The king approved it immediately when he heard that the heart would give a permanent increase to the quality of products. But Dean was already thinking further. The guild, apprentices, dungeons, artifacts, and now the forge node as well. The heart of the ancient forge allowed the creation of a place where the system and craft would work together on a permanent basis. This meant that the quality of products would grow not by 10%, not by 20%, but at the level of the entire workshop. The system confirmed. Forge node project available requirements. Heart of the Ancient Anvil 1 Master Level 3 plus 3 Masters Level 2 plus 12 Apprentices access to dungeon materials 4 plus result. Permanent quality bonus for all products. Accelerated training possibility of serial production of high-class items. Dean sat before the notification and smiled. Swords alone were no longer enough for him. Now he was building a place that would make swords better than anyone else. The next important victory was Bao. He had already been working under Dean's guidance for almost half a year, and the results were obvious. Diagnostics on the ring, explanations, practice, quality control, all of this had made him a blacksmith of another level. On one ordinary day, he forged a blade almost without hints. The system, as if it had only been waiting for this, showed. Apprentice Bao has reached the mastery threshold. New status. Master blacksmith ability. Independent detection of hidden defects. Transfer skill. Basic training possible. Bao stood before the finished product and could not believe it. I made this. He asked quietly. Yes, Dean answered. Without you? With your hands. But by your decisions. Bao looked at the sword, then at him. Then you were right, the old blacksmith said. You are not building a one-man workshop. You are building a school. Dean nodded. Exactly. And at that moment, he understood that the most important part of his path had already begun. Not the legendary blade. Not the guild. Not the dungeons. But the people who could now do the same as he did, even if in a different way. Of course, success could not remain unanswered. The old blacksmith houses did not disappear. They began to unite. Their representatives came to the king again, this time not with complaints, but with an ultimatum. If the guild continued to expand, they would withdraw capital, supplies, and connections. Not the entire kingdom depended on the forge, but a lot did. The king summoned Dean. They are pressuring us, Estair said without preamble. They do not like your guild. They do not like that it is taking the market. They do not like that you teach people outside their houses. Let them leave, Dean said. The king looked at him. That will damage the economy. In the short term, yes. In the long term, no. They are forcing the craft into stagnation. The guild gives progress. They are ready to sabotage supplies. Then we will start buying or directly from dungeons and provinces. That is a risk. Yes, but I have already proven that it is possible to work with risk. The king was silent, then said, You are not just a blacksmith, Dean. You are already flowing into politics. I only wanted to make better weapons. And, as usually happens, that turned out not to be enough. Dean smiled slightly. Sounds true. The 7th dungeon gave materials. The Heart of the Ancient Anvil gave the workshop a new level. The apprentices began to grow. The king supported the guild. The old houses tried to apply pressure. And then Dean decided that he needed to go even deeper. Not figuratively. The system showed a new entry. Dungeon Level 8 Glass C-Type. Ancient Biomagical Zone feature. Surface cuts like a blade. Deep layers contain materials capable of strengthening artifacts to the impossible monsters. Glass Predators Level 8 Storm Guardians Level 9 Rare Boss. See Blacksmith Level 10 Target Materials. Heart of the Storm Glass Vein Water of the Eternal Storm. Dean looked at the list and felt a familiar feeling rising inside. Not fear, but challenge. This was not just the next dungeon. It was the path to the next step of his mastery. He called Kel, Mira, Tog, and Ellen. We are going deeper. Kel only sighed. As always, you are merciless to us. I pay. That is not an argument. That is a good argument. Mira grunted. Where are we going? Dean unfolded the system map. To the Glass Sea. Tog whistled. Is that where even the air cuts? Yes. Ellen raised an eyebrow. And why do we need to go there? Dean looked at the map for a long time. For material that will allow me to make a forge capable of growing on its own. Silence. Then Kel slowly smiled. Now that sounds like a real plan. Before the expedition, he spent the evening in the workshop. Without apprentices. Without the king. Without noise. Only him, the hearth, the heart of the ancient anvil, and several finished products on the table. The blade of will, the sword ice and crystal, the first improved armor for the guard, artifacts for Bao and Liv. He looked at all this and understood how far he had already gone. Once, he had been a poor blacksmith's apprentice, almost no one. Now he had a school, a guild, masters, apprentices, access to dungeons, royal support, and a name that was already spoken with respect. But this was only the beginning. Are you satisfied? The system asked. Dean did not answer immediately. Then he said honestly, yes. But I am not calming down. Why? Because every time I take a new step, the world shows even more of what can be improved. That is development. Yes. He ran his fingers along the hilt of the blade of will. I do not want just to make things. I want to change the very way people protect their cities, their loved ones, their countries. Then continue. Dean looked into the fire. Outside was night. Ahead lay the glass sea, an 8th-level dungeon, new materials, new dangers, new products. And beyond them, possibly, the forge node. And beyond it, an entirely different world.